Hello everyone and welcome. I am the Congressman and today we're going to talk about youth, specifically mine. No, I'm just kidding. That was lost a long time ago. No, we're going to talk about youth in Congress, and specifically the youngest congressman in American history. Maybe. From the United States Constitution, Article 1, Section 2, Clause 2. No person shall be a representative who shall not have attained to the age of 25 years. Now, that's a nice rule and all. The Senate has the same one, only with 30 years of age. But rules only work if somebody is able to enforce them. And it won't surprise you to learn that in the 1700s and 1800s, birth records were not always great. Just go look at my Every Member of Congress series and see how many people were born on an unknown date. In some cases, the year itself isn't even known. And that's what we know now, with the benefit of 200 years worth of historians doing the Lord's work. In the actual 1700s and 1800s, there were very few, if any, ways to confirm somebody's age. As a result, there were several congressmen who joined the House before they turned 25, and senators who joined before they turned 30, including some well-known names. Henry Clay was only 29, and John Eaton was only 28. But the youngest congressman in American history, maybe, isn't a well-known name. Until today. This is the William C. Claiborne story. William Charles Cole Claiborne was born in Sussex County, Virginia well, that's just it. We don't exactly know when, and that's the problem. We do know it was in the 1770s, but for now, let's put a pin in that and we'll circle back to it later. We'll start by focusing on what we do know, but to do that, we have to start at the end. William Charles Cole Claiborne died in New Orleans, Louisiana on November 23, 1817. This date was very convenient for reasons that will become clear in a little bit. Claiborne had spent nearly his entire adult life in and around politics. As a teenager, he worked as an assistant to John Beckley, clerk of the United States House of Representatives. In 1797, Claiborne, now living in Tennessee, was specially elected to Congress to replace Andrew Jackson, who had himself been specially elected to the Senate to replace the recently expelled William Blount. Claiborne served 2 terms in the House from 1797 to 1801. After leaving Congress, President Jefferson appointed him governor of the Mississippi Territory. He held that post for 2 years until President Jefferson then appointed him governor of the New Orleans Territory. New Orleans in this case being little n, big O. Quick explanation. After the Louisiana Purchase, the area was divided at the 33rd parallel. Everything north of it became the Louisiana Territory. Everything south of it, what is today the state of Louisiana, was called the Orleans Territory. That's the part Claiborne was appointed governor of. Claiborne was a somewhat controversial choice for the post, as he wasn't from the area, he wasn't Catholic, and he didn't speak any French. In time, though, he won the people over and became a respected figure. All except for one guy, a congressman called Daniel Clark, who he fought a duel with in 1807. So anyway, he was territorial governor until...
Hey, you're gonna mention a duel and not talk about it? On this channel?
Okay, fine, I'll tell you about the duel. Daniel Clark was the territory's non-voting delegate from 1806 to 1809. Territories had representation in the House, but not the Senate. This is because the House was meant to represent the people, and the Senate was meant to represent the states. Hence the population-based appropriation of the former, and the more equal representation in the latter. Since territories weren't, and aren't, states, they get one representative in the House who can participate in debates and speak on the floor, but that person can't vote. Hence, non-voting delegate. Clark had been born and raised in Ireland and then moved to Philadelphia in the early 1780s. From there, he moved to New Orleans in what was then Spanish Louisiana in 1786. He became an American citizen again after the Louisiana Purchase. In the years leading up to that, though, he had actually been one of the most prominent promoters of making the now French territory part of the United States. After the purchase, he frequently worked with Mississippi Territorial Governor William Claiborne and General James Wilkinson, who was actually a double agent working with Spanish authorities, but that's a story for a different day. Clark worked to help ensure that the transfer of power locally went smoothly. To sum it all up in one compound sentence, Daniel Clark was one of the area's biggest pro-America boosters and had been for quite some time. So, when President Jefferson appointed Claiborne territorial governor instead of him, he was a little salty. In 1806, Daniel Clark was elected to Congress as the Orleans Territory's non-voting delegate. At some point in January of 1807, he made some comments on the House floor that caught the attention of Governor Claiborne. Now, I tried to find the direct quote. I read through the annals of Congress for this time period. Clark was definitely there, but any speechifying he did was never printed in the record, which isn't too surprising. The journals at this point were really more like simple summaries and not the word-for-word transcriptions they would eventually become. But a newspaper called the Orleans Gazette apparently did print his remarks. I tried to find it on newspapers.com, but the Orleans Gazette isn't part of their database. However, I do know it existed because several contemporary articles do reference it. Sadly, I never did find any reprinting of the direct quote. The best I came up with was this article. From the Aurora General Advertiser in Philadelphia for January 19, 1807. Mr. D. Clark is held forth in the federal papers as declaring that the people of New Orleans had no confidence in Governor Claiborne, and that this was the cause of their indifference to the government, that the whites were neglected and the blacks regarded. Yet the stupid Philadelphia Gazette now says that these whites have at the 11th hour promptly evinced their attachment to government. Then if this is true, Mr. D. Clark's declaration concerning them must be totally unfounded, and he is their calumniator. Claiborne didn't take too kindly to that and demanded that Clark apologized. When Congressman Clark refused, Governor Claiborne challenged him to a duel. On June 8, 1807, the two men met at Clark's plantation, which still stands by the way, and had their duel. Claiborne was shot in the leg. Well, both legs actually. According to one source, Clark's bullet went through one of Claiborne's legs and lodged in the other one. Ouch. At any rate, Governor Claiborne survived and the duel didn't damage his popularity. In fact, it probably boosted it. Enough so that when the Orleans Territory became the state of Louisiana in 1812 and it needed a governor, Claiborne was elected easily. He served one 4-year term, leaving office in December of 1816. In early 1817, the state legislature elected him to the United States Senate. But over the course of the summer, Claiborne fell ill and he never went to Washington. He died in New Orleans on November 23, 1817. Okay, so that was William Claiborne's political career. But William Claiborne's political career isn't the point of this video. The point of this video is that we're trying to determine if he was indeed the youngest congressman ever. And to start, my go-to sources for birth dates aren't exactly helpful. Wikipedia, 1773 to 1775. Biographical Directory, circa 1775. Political Graveyard, 1775. Find a Grave, August 13th, 1775. And the National Governors Association has it as January 1st, 1775, but we can ignore that one though, because on their website, anyone with an unknown date for their birth date just defaults to January 1st, which is both stupid and annoying. It seems like 1775 is the consensus, so we'll move on. Claiborne for sure joined Congress on November 23, 1797, and he for sure died on November 23, 1817. Conveniently, exactly 20 years later. According to his gravestone, he was 42 years old. 42 minus 20 is 22. So he was 22 when he joined Congress, right? Well, no. The same stone says he was a representative in Congress at 23. And the Wikipedia page that literally lists the youngest congressman says 21 to 22. So something is still off. Going back to Claiborne's Wikipedia page, it's the only one that gives a range of years and, more importantly, there are sources. Digging into those sources, I believe that William Claiborne's birth date was August 13th, 1773, and I have two main pieces of evidence to back that up. Exhibit A. William C.C. Claiborne, Profile of a Democrat, written by Professor John D. Winters, originally published by the Louisiana Historical Association in 1969. This is the most detailed and in-depth biography of Claiborne I could find anywhere, and it provides a lot of valuable information, the most valuable being his parents' names, William and Mary Lee. Professor Winters even cites a direct source, a book written by Nathaniel H. Claiborne, William Claiborne's younger brother. Conveniently, that book is on Google Books, so I was able to read it myself. Exhibit B, from the William and Mary College Quarterly Historical Magazine, Volume 14, Number 1. These are the notes from Albemarle Parish Register, Sussex County, Virginia. If we scroll down to page 5, we find an entry for William Cole, son of William Claiborne and Mary his wife, born August 13, 1773. For good measure, one of the godfathers is listed as Ferdinand Lee. Find a Grave doesn't have Mary's parents listed, but her first child was named Ferdinand, implying that her father's name was Ferdinand based on the naming conventions of the time period. So it seems likely that the godfather, Ferdinand Lee, is Mary's father. So, my conclusion is that William Claiborne was born August 13, 1773. But there is a problem. In my Exhibit A, Professor Winters also says Claiborne was born in 1775. Now, I believe this is a mistake on Nathaniel Claiborne's part, and you'll see why in a little bit. But for now, let's run through his early life with both dates in mind and see how it plays out. The first life event with an age attached to it is that Claiborne moved to New York when he was 15 to find John Beckley, the clerk of the House of Representatives, and apply for work. Professor Winters got that from Nathaniel's book. In that book, Nathaniel Claiborne specifies that William was in a hurry to leave because Congress would soon be moving to Philadelphia, so that means this was 1790, and this is why Professor Winters says 1775. William Claiborne made it to New York, despite a bad case of measles on the way up there, and successfully found work with John Beckley. Next, Congress moved to Philadelphia and Claiborne went with it, still working for Beckley. This move happened sometime in the autumn of 1790, between the second and third sessions. At the urging of North Carolina Representative John Sevier, misidentified here as a delegate from the Tennessee Territory, which is itself misidentified, it was the Southwest Territory, Claiborne moved to Richmond, Virginia to study law. He was there for 3 months, which his brother says he devoted almost entirely to the Society of the Ladies. But nevertheless, he passed the bar exam. And here it says he was 20 years old, which means he became a lawyer in either 1793 or 1795. Importantly, Sevier left Congress when his term ended in 1791 and immediately returned to the Southwest Territory to serve as Brigadier General of the Territorial Militia. So if indeed Sevier was the one that urged Claiborne to study law, and Nathaniel's book is very clear that he was, then he did it before he left Philadelphia in the spring of 1791. This starts to push us towards the 1773 birth date, since it seems unlikely that Claiborne would make that decision and then wait 4 years to act on it. But anyway, in either 1793 or 1795, the 20-year-old lawyer moved to Sullivan County in the Southwest Territory. According to Professor Winters, for 2 years he set aside most social pleasures and devoted his time to the study and practice of law. According to Nathaniel Claiborne, fate had decreed that he should continue at the bar but a short time, in all not more than 2 years. This is immediately followed by Tennessee finally having enough people to qualify for statehood, which happened in 1795, and Claiborne being selected as one of Sullivan County's delegates to the State Constitutional Convention, which started on January 17, 1796. If the 1775 birth date was the correct one, there is simply no way that Claiborne could have become a lawyer in Virginia in 1795, moved to Tennessee, spend 2 years practicing law, then attend a state convention that started in January of 1796. It's literally impossible. Time and space don't work that way. And so, this is why I believe the 1773 birth date is the correct one. He became a lawyer in Virginia in 1793, moved to Tennessee, spent 2 years building up a remarkably successful practice for someone so young, and then got elected to that state constitutional convention. This means that William Claiborne's gravestone is wrong about his age. Considering that Nathaniel Claiborne wrote that biography of his brother right after he died, it seems that Nathaniel was the go-to source of information. He may have even been the one who wrote the inscription. He never gives a birth date in his book and only says William was little turned of 40 years old when he died. I think he was just simply wrong. As I said at the top, birth records weren't really much of a thing back then, and it's not much of a stretch to imagine that Nathaniel Claiborne either didn't know or didn't remember the year his older brother had been born. So he estimated 1775. And that's what went on the gravestone, and so that's what all the modern go-to sources say. But I think the Sussex County notes are the smoking gun. Now I know, Claiborne is not an uncommon surname, and William is an extremely common first name. So it's not impossible that there were other William Claibornes born in that same area around that same time. But how many could there have been that also have the middle name Cole, also have the same parents' names, and also have a godfather that happens to share a name with their maternal grandfather? So there we are. William Charles Cole Claiborne was born in Sussex County, Virginia on August 13, 1773, which means that when he joined Congress on November 23, 1797, he was 24 years and 102 days old. So he is the youngest congressman ever by about 3.5 months. And that was the William C.C. Claiborne story. Thank you so much for watching. Like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel, follow me on Twitter, Blue Sky, Facebook. Maybe someday I'll fire up the TikTok, who knows. Anyway, I am the Congressman, and I will see you next time. Just go look at my Every Member of Congress series and see... William Charles Cole Claiborne. Yeah. He held that post for 2 years, and then He held that post for 2 years, and then... Claiborne was a somewhat controversial choice for the post, since he wasn't from the area, he wasn't Catholic, and he didn't speak any French. In time, though, he became a pretty respected non-voting delegate from 1806 to 1809. Territories had representation. So anyway, Clark had been born and raised in Ireland, then moved to Philadelphia in the early 1780s. From there, he moved to Digging into these sources, I believe that William Claiborne's birth date is August 13th, 1773, and I have two main